It's common to see that gatherers and crafters are second-class citizens in the typical MMORPG, and it feels bad if gathering or crafting is your calling in games. So this is how Corepunk rewards dedicated crafters and gatherers. But being unrewarded and left behind as a gatherer or crafter will soon be a thing of the past. And this is because Corepunk rewards players that are dedicated to their respective professions with a viable progression path and income source. We first need to understand the basics of gathering and crafting in Corepunk. For our gathering professions we have mining, logging, butchering, herbalism, and for the crafting professions we have weaponsmithing, alchemy, mysticism, and construction. There's one further crafting profession which works a little differently, so I'm not really focusing on that too much, but I'll explain how that works shortly. If you've ever played an RPG with gathering or crafting, I expect you'll be familiar with the following concept, so tell me if this sounds familiar. Throughout the world, there are various resources that are associated with different professions. For instance, trees are associated with logging, rocks with mining, and so on. Every time you chop down a tree, butcher a boar, etc., you earn experience in that particular profession. The more experience you earn, the higher your level in a particular skill. This is all basic stuff that you commonly see in other games. So what makes Corepunk different? In Corepunk, we have a secondary stat known as proficiency, and this stat can help by not only allowing you to get access to rarer resources, but it can actually accelerate not only how fast you level up a particular gathering or crafting skill, but it can also increase the speed at which your character levels at. It's worth highlighting that all the experience you earn towards your profession, you also earn towards your character's level. So every time you rummage through a thick bush, you can increase your character's XP. And let me explain how this works. You have a proficiency bonus for your gathering and a proficiency bonus for your crafting. The proficiency bonus has other implications for crafting which are important to understand, and I will come back to that. Every time you perform a gathering or crafting action, your proficiency on that skill increases. It ranges from 0 to 100%. Now here's the nuance of the system. You can only have a maximum of 100% in total over all 4 of the different professions. So that's 1 stat for gathering and 1 stat for crafting. What this means is that when you increase your proficiency of one profession, you decrease the proficiency of another. So it reduces the least recently used stat. If you get to 100% in logging, for example, and you mine some ore, your logging will drop to 99% and your mining will increase to 1%. I'll explain what you can do to prevent this once I've explained the benefits of the system. So what actually are the benefits of the proficiency system? When you get to certain proficiency levels, you unlock extra bonuses. These bonuses unlock every 20% and give you a better return on each resource. So at 20%, your failure rate is reduced to 4% and the gathering time is also reduced. When you raise your proficiency to 40%, you get 2 gathering cycles per resource and you have a chance to obtain the rare blue items. And 2 gathering cycles means 2 resources, and 2 resources means double the experience. Also, your chance of failure is reduced to 3%. 60% reduces the logging time. 80% grants 3 gathering cycles, and 3 gathering cycles means 3 times the experience, and also reduces the chance of failure down to just 1%. Finally, at 100%, failure is impossible, and you unlock the ability to obtain epic resources. And epic resources actually come with a hefty experience value. So as you can see here, the more you focus on one particular profession, the faster you will actually level up that profession. So what happens when you're at 100% proficiency on any particular profession, yet you want, or maybe need, to gather from another profession's resources? There's a real simple solution. You can lock your proficiencies. And this will cost you 100% of your max mana to lock, and each time you craft or gather, you'll use a small amount of mana to complete the task. It's a small price to pay for being able to maintain that 100% stat while being able to explore a different profession without the risk of losing your bonuses. So far, I've focused mainly on the perspective of gathering, but what about crafting? Well, crafting is pretty similar actually. You have the equivalent proficiency bonuses for crafting items. The main difference here is that typically all crafted items are untradeable. The one exception to this is when you are 100% proficient in a particular craft, then that item becomes bind on equip, allowing these items to be traded. The other crafting profession is cooking, but this doesn't currently have a proficiency bonus attached. It's in its own category and doesn't have any competing professions. It does level up in rank, so don't disregard it, but you don't need to worry about proficiency. There's different thoughts on what the best way to approach professions is, especially the gathering professions, but which is the best? One approach would be to hyper-focus on just one type of resource and one resource only. By ignoring all other resources, you would rapidly level up that one profession to a high rank, which would unlock the ability to gather from higher tier resource nodes. Taking this approach would prevent the progression of other types of gathering until you are able to lock the proficiencies, but it would allow you to increase your experience potential. Another way would be to gather everything in sight. As there would be more nodes overall, you'd be able to level up all 4 of your gathering professions quickly, but you'd limit yourself to around 25% proficiency for all the professions, so you wouldn't get more than one gathering cycle per resource. And finally, one approach would be to focus on just 2 resources and bring each of these up to 40% proficiency each. This would mean that you would have 2 gathering cycles per resource, and you'd have the potential to find the rare blue resources. It really comes down to whether you wanted to become a jack of all trades or dedicate to a single craft. I'd personally start the game with the mindset of leveling up all resources to begin with, then transition to focusing on a more specific resource path and locking in over time. More testing and research is probably needed, but it's not too difficult to change direction at any point. Now, the next logical step would be to check out this recommended video right here.